Good morning, everybody. Here we are on day 2 of our military history tour in the north of France and the south of Belgium. Today we're coming to you from Belgium. We're in Ypres, which is a beautiful little town, completely destroyed in the Great War, now rebuilt in the old style. Can you believe it? That would not happen in Australia. They would just put up a blonde brick dump, to replace it. The cathedral was rebuilt finished in 1960, and it looks like it's Gothic. Anyway, we're going to the Ypres salient, which is where over 1 million people lost their lives over a small patch of ground, so can't wait to bring you that story. And yeah, we're off to breakfast, so see you later.
And they're actually inspired by a photograph, a fairly well-known photograph of a German burial where the soldiers were standing in that sort of pose. The raised area here contains 23,000 Germans. This is the result of concentrations that went on. Initially they stopped the concentrations in 1925, but after the Second World War they decided to concentrate the German burials again, and the last concentrations here were about 1956. So as I say, the remains of 23,000 Germans in there and 2 Scottish.
How did Hitler cope with all the Jews that are buried here? Jewish soldiers?
In many of the cemeteries where they've got upright crosses, there are headstones for Jewish soldiers. And although there were incidents where it was said that some of these headstones were kicked over during the Second World War, generally speaking, the soldiers of the Second World War respected the dead of the First.
Jewish or not?
Yeah. It was a Jewish doctor that treated Hitler in the church crypt at Messines.
How ironic.
Yeah. So have a wander around, have a look at some of these.
So these are like the pillboxes. They weren't like the ones in World War II where you shoot out of. You know, they're just for protection from the bombardments, and then that you'd come in and when the doors are underground, and then when the bombs stop, you come out and start shooting people. I guess.
Can I have a look?
Yeah, and this is once the front line of the Western Front. There's 3 here, and yeah. So I mean, you can see out, but they're designed just for protection from the bombs. Under every stone there's about 20 people, 20 soldiers dead.
There are 2 further bunkers in the cemetery. Where you see the tall trees there down to the right, there's a German bunker there. There's another one across on the left-hand side of the cemetery. I say this is the largest Commonwealth War Grave cemetery in the world. There are almost 12,000 men buried in this cemetery, and 8,400 of them are unknown, like this Australian. Just an Australian soldier of the Great War. If they knew the nationality of the man, they would put that on the headstone. If they knew the battalion that he was in, they'd put it on the headstone. Anything they knew, they would put on there. But where it just says a soldier of the Great War, they couldn't even determine the man's nationality. It could be a German. It's been a body that's been found on the battlefield and given a decent burial. There are more Australians buried in this cemetery than in any other First World War cemetery in the Western Front. And although they're scattered all over the place, there's a number buried here, but there's quite a few of them buried down in the far left-hand corner. Ian and Anne have got a relative buried in this cemetery. That was Robert Eastleigh. Yeah, we'll have a wander down there. I'd like to take you down and show you a couple of the headstones down here from 2 lads that were awarded the Victoria Cross. One is a guy called Captain Jeffries. He was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions on the 12th of October, the day that he was killed. And it was from here that the Australians launched that failed attack towards Passchendaele on the 12th of October. One of the reasons why it went so wrong was that we didn't know it, but at the same time we were launching our attack, the Germans launched a counter-attack. Exactly the same time. They both got out the trenches, met up in no man's land. Now a lot of people see, or have got this vision of First World War, of the infantrymen going across no man's land with shrapnel going off and all the rest of it. Take that a step further. What happens when they get to the enemy trenches?
Hand-to-hand fighting.
The Germans ain't going to put their hands up and say, mercy, comrade, you know. And a 303 rifle with a bayonet on it is about that long. Not much good in the confines of a trench. So the weapon of preference was a hand grenade. You could, you know, lob hand grenades in and deal with them that way. But at the end of the day, it was a case of get in there with whatever weapons you could come up with. Often they would sharpen the edges of entrenching tools, or they would use short daggers. They had weapons called a knob kerry, which were basically a club with metal on the end of it. And you know, these lads would be thrashing away at each other. And then at the end of the war, they get back home and their mother or their wife says, you've survived, you know, you can forget it now. You can't unsee or undo things. And these weren't homicidal maniacs. They were just blokes that were caught up in this awful situation. Not only were they having to do serious damage to each other and kill each other, but the conditions here were absolutely appalling. If you slipped into a shell hole, there wasn't much chance you were going to get out. The sides were so slimy and wet that you just couldn't pull yourself out. Unless your mates saw you go down there, you're going to stay there. And this landscape, like many of the battlefields, is still filled with the missing. Now there's 54,000 names on the Menin Gate, including all of the Australians that were killed in this area. And on this wall we've got here, there are an additional 35,000. October, during the attacks on here, his platoon were being held up by a machine gun at a place called Hamburg Farm. That's Hamburg Farm just down there. Yeah, it was rebuilt after the war. And Lewis McGee decided he'd have enough of that, so he ran forward armed only with a pistol and killed the 7 crew. Now, by doing that, he put that machine gun out of action, and that allowed the company to progress further on. He was nominated for the Victoria Cross, but then on the 12th of October, the same day that the other guy was killed, he was attacking across this ground here when he himself was killed in action. So although he was awarded the VC, he wouldn't have actually seen it. He probably wouldn't even known that it had been awarded. I brought his great niece out here on tour a few years ago, and she brought with her a photograph of Lewis McGee as a fit young soldier and a photograph of his widow aged 90. She'd gone all through her life, and yeah, obviously still missing Lewis. Yeah. The people at Hamburg Farm don't like visitors. In fact, they object quite furiously to visitors. But I thought, well, I can't not take her on to Hamburg Farm. So I drove the car into the stackyard and I said, what I want you to do is get as many photographs as you can of that. And I went and knocked on the door to ask permission. And by the time we got thrown off, she'd got the photos that she needed. Well, I wouldn't normally do it, but as it was a relative, I just asked permission. So,
What did they say? No.
oh,
Or whatever they say in Flemish.
They're very strange people. It's a father and son. When you go in there,
Well, they're over it.
you'd think the house hadn't been refurbished after the war. There's broken windows and the curtains are filthy. It's just these 2 guys living
Can
there.
I ask, were they the original family
I
that's
don't
come
know.
back?
I don't know. I suspect they probably were.
You don't get time to ask, I guess.
No. All right, so as you can see, it's a massive cemetery. But when you think of the other one that we've been to at Langemark, think about the scale of that and the 40,000 in Langemark, 12,000 here. It just shows you how tightly they've packed them in through there. Okay.
Okay, so here's some evidence of Allied artillery obviously hitting them. These are protection bunkers, and clearly it was incapable of penetrating. So the Germans are in here being protected, the Australians are coming from that direction down there, from Ypres up to here, and they've done the artillery and thought that, you know, they'd taken out the German positions when they hadn't. The Allied artillery was incapable of penetrating German concrete. And up there, where the sort of sacrifice is where the objective was. That was the main German command post up there, and they've actually built the sort of sacrifice and the memorial in Tyne-Cot Cemetery, which is the largest Allied cemetery in the world, or Commonwealth cemetery in the world, over the original bunker, and you can just see the concrete poking out of the reef there. But yeah, it was not easy. And not sure if this is an old trench, but this is where my grandfather's first cousin won a military medal, basically for restoring communications under what they called extremely heavy German barrages on 4 occasions, and also acting as a guide between here, Polygon Wood, and Hooge and Glencorse Wood, which is where headquarters were. Because basically you can see trees and things around you everywhere, but this was just mud and matchstick-like branches sticking out, or trunks, you know, that had been blown into matchsticks during the war. So, could be an old trench. Start digging, Huey, you never know what you might find.
How good would that be if you found something? Just
Think it's an old trench? I'll have to ask him. Walk up the other side and have a look. Take cover!
oh, you okay?
Yeah.
Fuck. You okay? Oh,
It's my usual
I think that's going on for alarm.
Did you get it?
Yeah.
Oh, me bottom! Oh, it's a very popular little joint, doesn't it?
You get done for terrorism.
With the explosion of 19 mines simultaneously, blowing up German defence works and forcing them to withdraw to the deep wells in the main road, which they reached on June 11th. The main fight.
Hi guys, Cycling Addict here. Just halfway through the video, I've just gone to a local little shop and I bought these. This is a German cartridge right here, bullet cartridge, and this is a English, like, Commonwealth one. And then these 2 bullet heads right here. There's one there as well. Commonwealth. And the way you can tell, I'm not sure how you can tell with these, that's just what the shop lady told us. But I'm not sure how you can tell with, but I know how to tell with these. Now what you do is you see here, if you can focus, you can see there it's got a groove down the bottom. Now that's what the German ones have, but the English ones don't. So that's how you can tell what type of bullet casing it is. And then it also helps that they're 2 different colours. But that's just random. Anyway, yeah, enjoy the rest of the video.